What's up, guys? So this is my branded profile. So last time I took this to locals, I went X0, and I decided to update it a bit. And this is what I'll be taking moving forward. I do think this is a really, really good variant of the deck. So start off with, we've got 3 Aluba, 1 Tragedy, 1 Adlib. So Aluba, obviously, it's just a really good card. Tragedy, I keep going back and forth on this, but in this variant, I'm doing more stuff with my hand, basically. Sounds a bit weird, doesn't it? I'm doing more stuff with my hand, so I think this is better in this variant. And I'm playing Banishment and Brandon Red, which makes this very, very good. And I'm also playing 2 element cards in this, which also makes this great. One of the nice things as well is having access to Adlib, Lubellion, and 2 elements gives you a lot more recursion in this deck than you'll normally have, which makes the Kashtira matchup a bit easier than it could be otherwise. Then I play 2 Blazing Cartesia. So I go back between 2 and 3. So like right now on BB, I'm playing 3. This card's just the best card in your deck. It's got amazing synergy with 2 elements, which is what makes this card so good. And this card's so good in this variant, and then it's got good synergy with the Despias as well. But the thing is, the 2 elements are better cards than the Despias. So with the Despias, it turns bricks into engine pieces. With the 2 elements, it turns bricks into combo starters, and that's why I think the 2 elements are kind of so good for this variant, because you do want that ability to kind of make big fusion plays off one card, and it just makes this card have so much pressure. Like a lot of the times, I don't fuse with this and make Grand Guignol or whatever it's called. I just keep fusing a 2 element in my hand and a monster on my field, and I keep doing that and looping fusions, which is really, really good. So yeah, this card is amazing. I'll still say it too. I think I see it all the time. But I can also say that it's fine if you play it 3. Like, it's good enough that I'm never sad to see that card. I play these 3. I don't play Rhino anymore. Rhino the worst one right now, because what made Branded Tier so good before, so I played Branded Tier at last format, and I might put up in the corner my old profile for that. But what made Branded Tier so good before was that essentially gave you starters that was like a one or 2 card starter that wasn't branded fusion. So you had instant fusion, you had Rhino Heart to just make Kit Coloss, etc, etc. Now you can't do that anymore, which means these are no longer 1 card starters unless your engine is already online. But then when your engine is online, this is a very efficient engine, because you can do things like, so Cartesia, for example, will fuse with a 2 element, make Grand Guignol, and then engrave, it will trigger again to make, and then with that combo usually make Rucolos. Or for example, you fuse on field a Despia and a 2 element, or fusion and 2 elements to make Dragstapelia, and then engrave, it fuses again, and then you get to make Queritus or Masquerade. And so because of that, I think the 2 elements are really, really good. Another nice thing as well is I'm playing Guardian Chimera, and it helps chain block that when these are in hand with other stuff, I don't know, whatever I'm making it with Guardian Chimera. And then on top of that as well, it means that King of the Swamp is an even better card. And now, the thing about King of the Swamp that's so good is that this can be a name of a fusion. And so this can replace Cartesia, this can replace Albaz, which is super important, this can replace Kit Coloss, which means that in the Kashtira matchup, you don't really care about losing all your Albazes. You can always play the game as long as you have 1 King of the Swamp. So what's really good, for example, is often later in the game, I'll mill a Sheeran and have a King of the Swamp. I use these 2, make Lubellion, and then now I shuffle cards back for my Banish Zone, and I get to kind of put everything back in the deck. So King of the Swamp is so good, and I only actually play 1 Poly along with the King of the Swamp. I'm only making Chimera once, because I'm only playing 1 Chimera. I can make him more than once, but he only ever comes up once in games. But it's the actual card itself that's so good. This just gives me another option with the card. So yeah, play 3 Torrents and 3 King of the Swamp. I think it's very, very good and branded. And it adds another dimension. Again, the biggest weakness of branded is that your plays sometimes live and die with branded fusion. This means that you don't lose to your branded fusion getting ashed as often. And if your branded fusion doesn't get ashed, you have more plays. Only need 2 Albaz, because I've got, again, this is another great thing about King of the Swamp. So recently people have been playing 3 Albaz. Now the reason people play 3 Albaz is because they feel like it's a bit good with like kind of it getting banished and all of that. But in actuality, this is a terrible card. You don't want to see him. If you want to summon him, you want to summon him off fusion deployment, or you want to be sending him branded fusion. Having 3 King of the Swamp means that I have more copies of him, and so I have those extra copies of Albaz I need to give me redundancy in case Kashtira starts destroying my whole deck. Now obviously this won't work for branded fusion, but it'll work for all the other fusions in the grave, like I said, with the 2 elements and stuff, which is really, really nice. Then moving on, play 1 Saranea, 1 Albion, 1 Mercurial, and 1 Dark Magician. So these, I'd say, are the biggest bricks in the deck. So, actually, apart from Saranea. Apart from Saranea and Albion, actually, these 2 are the biggest bricks. So Saranea, just for dumping stuff, you just play them because you have to. Same with Albion. These 2 essentially let you get to Brand of Fusion without having to normal or special summon. And what's particularly nice, obviously, as well, is that if you have like a Sheeran, for example, Sheeran can discard this and trigger that effect, which is nice. Albion is just good. Upstart Goblin. Mercurio is really, really bad. I only play it just so I can make the Link, whatever it's called, I can't remember, the Beast Warrior Link. So I can make him sometimes, but other than that, it's actually not that good. And if I was to cut a card, I would probably cut this maybe for Kit, or I'll just get rid of the Beast one because I never really have to make him. And I don't know, play another Dragstapelia because that card's actually really, really good in this. And then I play the one Mago Nero. You have to play this because it will insta-win certain matchups that are hard for Branded. So Branded has good matchups against most of the top tier decks. Actually, no, that's wrong. It has okay matchups against most of the top tier decks, but against like the slightly below tier, so this is like the Sword Souls, the Runics, those kind of decks, it has incredibly powerful matchups. And so the ones that it does lose to, though, which tend to be your back row matchups, Dragoon will just win those for you. Kashtira as well, which is hard sometimes. Dragoon will just insta-win it for you, so you do need to play this. I do think it's mandatory. And again, what's very nice is playing King of the Swamp and stuff like that means that you can make Dragoon even without this. But I like having the pop because obviously having that extra pop is very useful for your Dragoon. It means he actually has pressure and he's not just a fat body. Then in terms of spells, 3 Branded Fusion, 3 Branded Opening, 1 Branded Loss, 1 Branded in Red. So yeah, nothing really to say about these ratios, just this is what you should play. I don't play Rebranded because while that card is a good card, in this variant you have too many bricks and too many moving pieces to get away with kind of a non-instant star like that. 1 Gold Sock, 1 Called By, 3 Fusion Deployment and 2 Planet. So mandatory, you have to play these 2. Well, actually, I say you don't necessarily have to play Gold Sark, but it's nice to have Gold Sark or Foolish or both, and Call by the Grave because of Ash. Fusion Deployment is amazing. It's just so OP in this deck. There's so many options you have, and that's why I think this card is just. I mean, I've been saying for a while. As soon as this, I used to play this in Dark Magicians, funnily enough, a really long time ago. But I used to always think if there was ever like a monster that was a material that you could use for this, it would be such a good card. And you can see now it just has so much potential for this deck. It's amazing. We play 2 Planet. So really, these are just more tier names. You don't really play it for the second effect. The boost effect does come up a little bit, which is nice. But the pop effect is like, it's mediocre. But what is nice about it is it means that I don't have to worry completely about back row decks in game 1. I don't just insta-lose them because I don't have any back row removal, because I do have some way of triggering and kind of getting rid of floodgates and stuff sometimes, which is nice. But in reality, you really play this just because you want to see more tier names. So this is 5 tier names because you can't play any others at more than 1. And Rhino Heart's the worst tier name because it's not light or dark. But yeah, those are the rest of the spells. And then moving on to traps, we play 1 Branded Retribution, 1 Branded Banishment, and 3 evenly matched. So Branded Retribution because it's good. Branded Banishment, again, it works really, really well in this deck with Adlib and with the Tears and Lubellion and stuff. You just have so much recursion, so many different targets. It's great. And I like main deck 3 evenly matched right now. Evenly just claps so many boards. You just have to play it when you lose the dice roll. It's nice to draw into. And what's especially nice about Branded, in my opinion, is Branded is a deck that a lot of the times your opponent has to completely wipe out your board and pass the deck game back to you. They can't leave 1 or 2 cards on board because you'll just like roll them over, which means this is live even after turn 1 sometimes. And yeah, it's just a busted card. Evenly should be in everyone's main deck in my opinion right now because it's just unfair. Unless you're playing Kashtira or something, it should be in your main deck, and even then it probably should still be in your main deck. But yeah, that is the main deck. So that's 40 cards. So I've been on this 40 card tick for a while now. Like I love just that clean efficiency of exactly 40 cards. I never want to go even one card above it. Then for the extra deck, we play 1 Masquerade. So in Branded tier, this card is mandatory because he's so easy to make. Basically, every time you fuse a tier and a Branded, you get Queritus plus Masquerade, or you'll get like whatever you're making plus Masquerade. But yeah, this is just so easy to make. And this card is your win condition against slower decks. So against decks like Runic, against decks like Labyrinth, you want to establish this early because what will happen is those decks in tournaments, they can't kill you quickly, which means that you'll continually generate pressure. They'll have to waste resources to out this, which is actually quite frustrating to out. And then a lot of times you can put it back in your deck and just summon it again, and then eventually win off that. So this is your win condition. So many times against Runic, against Labyrinth, I summon this, and then I do other plays, and it's like, eventually I just end up winning because they have to keep dedicating resources to outing this instead of outing the monsters they actually care about. Really, really good card. Always play it in Branded tier. For the other Despia fusions, you play 1 Queritus and 1 Prosecinian. Again, these cards aren't amazing. The only reason why you really play Queritus and Prosecinian is just because like you have targets, so many ways to get to them, and they're good. It's like the materials that they need are good, but the card itself is they're both quite arse. This is OP for Sword Sword matchup, I guess, but that's about it. Quoritus, I guess, is coming up more now because there's more XYZ decks, but even then, just no one really plays into it. It's hard to play into Quoritus unless you're like intentionally misplaying. We play the one Guardian Chimera because it's just really good, very easy to get to in this deck, and having this is the other reason why I think Polymerization is so good and King of the Swamp is so good. I don't make this off Branded Beast that often. I almost always make it with Poly, just because an untargetable 3300 BR is something that most decks will struggle with this format. Most decks can't out untargetable monsters. So having Dragoon and then having this, I mean, like, it's just too many cards to deal with. So if you're against like a Sprite player, for example, they're going to struggle against a card like Guardian Chimera or struggle against a card like Dragoon, which is nice. And then its pop effect and draw effect is also very nice. Play the one Rinbram. I haven't summoned this in like 10 games. This card's... I said it before. The new fusions are mostly terrible. The best thing about the new fusions are the materials that they require. But beyond that, the new fusions are actually terrible. One Drinks Despia. This is very, very good because it means that a tier name can recycle any fusion very, very easily. And this card is just the best fusion in the game right now. Like, in terms of branded, this fusion wins almost every matchup by itself. So against Kashtira, you put a counter on their first monster, they can't play. Against Sprite, put a counter on the first monster, they can't play. Even in the mirror matchup, you put on their Luba to slow them down. Like, this card is just so good, and it's so easy and generic to make, which is great. Then in terms of the branded fusion, so we play so it's meant to be more than one, but missing. But yeah, that should be another Albion. I don't know. It's probably somewhere else in my bulk. But we've got the Albions, then we've got the Lubellians. You definitely need 2 Lubellians in this variant because what will happen is, a lot of times people now aren't hitting a Luba, they're waiting to see if you have Lost, and if you don't have Lost, they hit Lubellian instead. So I always like having 2 because you don't want to have one kind of stuck and then you can't play. And then also against Kashtira, if Kashtira is in the grind game, they will hit this, and then it's like you can't do much. So I do think 2 is really necessary. And then you play 2 Mirror Jade as well because Mirror Jade is just an overpowered boss monster. And then 1 Grand Gurganol. Again, the best thing about this is the materials he requires. All of his effects are irrelevant. In fact, most of the time, I'll banish this, for example, with like Albion or something to make another fusion because its second effect is so irrelevant. It doesn't come up for me enough. I don't think it's that good. Play the 1 Rukolos. Rukolos is very easy to make in this deck, and Rukolos is still a very, very good monster. It's got an absolutely huge body. It's basically 2 free negates. It's one of the few hard negates you have in this deck as well, and one of the ways you can play around Nib in this deck that isn't Mercuria. That's quite easy to get to. So yeah, Rukolos is just very, very good. And then my last card, I've just put Construct, but this is actually Dragoon. Yeah, Red Eyes Dark Dragoon is overpowered right now. It's always been overpowered. But it's very, very good, and it's an interesting win condition that a lot of decks can't deal with. So yeah, that's the extra deck. And then moving on to the side deck. So my philosophy for side deck is this. It's Gimmick Puppet beats everything, and then Gimmick Puppet beats everything but back row, and then deal with back row. That's my side deck philosophy. So I don't really care about siding much for going second because the branded main deck can deal going second if it just has a couple of cards to support. And so if I'm going first and I win die roll, or not if I win die roll, but if I'm going first going into games 2 and 3, in almost every matchup that's not back matchup, I just side in these because it wins. It just wins. If you resolve this and you lose that game, I don't know how you lost that game. They have to get really lucky if they're not a back row deck. So you got the Gimmick Puppet lock. Then from there, you just got a bunch of back row hate because back row is the only thing you really struggle with. So we've obviously got these, and obviously in the main deck as well, you've got Even Lead, you've got the planets. Like, this is just a lot of ways to deal with back row that you've got in your side. This can be anything as well. It doesn't have to be these specific cards. This just happens to be the ratio I went with. And then everything else is just Kashtira. So 3 Eclipse, 2 Talents, 2 Thrust. In the Kashtira matchup, often as well, I will side out the tiers, for example. I'll side out all the tier cards, and that'll give me a lot of space. And then usually I'll side out like a Mercuria or something. But yeah, the Talents is always... I only have 2 Thrust, otherwise I'd play 3. But Thrust is always live against Kashtira. Talents is very easy to make live against Kashtira, and Eclipse is also very good. Now, what's a bit frustrating about the Kashtira matchup, though, is that you can't do much when you take their Rise Heart. Like, you can play Zeus in your extra deck, for example, or you can play your own Arise in their extra deck, for example. There's nothing hugely wrong with that because at least you're kind of stunning their board. But it's not ideal. It's not necessarily a game-winning play, which is a bit of a shame. But I still think it's worth it because, for example, if you have both of these, for example, or if you have another breaker like an Even in your hand plus this, what you can do is obviously use that first, and then because they've used an effect, use this, add Branded Fusion, and now start your combo, which is what makes Thrust so good. And Eclipse because it's just nice. Yeah, it's a nice card in a lot of matchups as well. But yeah, guys, that is my branded profile. So yeah, I do think this deck is very, very good. It's been doing quite well. Like I said, I was EXO across 5 rounds in my locals. It was like 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago. now. I don't know. I just didn't upload. I think I did upload a video, but this is like the updated profile that I said I would do. But yeah, definitely give this deck a try. It is probably one of the more expensive decks at the moment, unfortunately. Not too expensive. I think it's just one or two expensive cards in it. But yeah, a really fun deck to try out. So let me know what you guys think, and I'll talk to you all soon. Peace.